We're live here at Sun City. Of course, there's a gala dinner that's about to get underway. If you can hear music, that's what it's all about. And that's the tourism leaders, really, of South Africa getting together under the auspices of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, just discussing what they can do to get tourism numbers up. We desperately need that revenue. It will create jobs. It will increase our fiscal bottom line. So that's what's happening here at Sun City. Let's now move to Washington. And President Cyril Ramaphosa headed to the USA, due in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. This is ahead of a meeting with President Joe Biden in the White House on Friday. Trade and investment and regional and international issues likely on the agenda. And after the US trip, Ramaphosa, of course, heading to the United Kingdom for the Queen's funeral, which takes place on Monday. But let's find out more about this trip on Friday. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Simon Marks, joining us now. Hello, Simon. Always great to chat to you. We're coming to you live from Sun City in the Northwest Province. Talk to us about the plan for tomorrow when President Ramaphosa meets with President Joe Biden.
Absolutely, Sally. Well, we are coming to you live from just outside the hotel where we think President Ramaphosa will be checking in with the delegation within the next 90 minutes or so. We think that his plane is going to be landing at Andrews Air Force Base in just under an hour, completing that long journey from Pretoria all the way here to Washington, D.C. And a very busy agenda lies ahead for him, including a breakfast meeting tomorrow morning at the residence of Vice President Kamala Harris, then of course that all-important Oval Office encounter, a bilateral meeting between President Joe Biden and President Ramaphosa. President Ramaphosa will become the first South African president to set foot inside the White House since 2014. It has been almost a decade since there was a face-to-face White House meeting between a sitting American president and a sitting South African president. So enormous stakes in that meeting, and many of them will be of tremendous relevance to the people that you're with there at Sun City, because trade and investment absolutely tops the agenda as far as government is concerned. They want to see more trade ties growing between the United States and South Africa. They point to encouraging developments over the past 2 and 3 years, increasing foreign direct investment by American businesses in South Africa. They are hoping to foster more of that. But there are complexities in this relationship as well, and they revolve around the issue of Ukraine. The United States government is eager to try and put pressure on President Ramaphosa to take a much tougher line towards Russia and Vladimir Putin's conduct in Ukraine than government has previously been willing to do. At this very moment, in a further indication of how busy a week it is here for the US relationship with South Africa, Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor is meeting Secretary of State Antony Blinken at the State Department. She was asked yesterday during an event that was hosted by the Council on Foreign Relations here whether the South African government is ready to give a little in terms of the relationship with Russia, and it certainly did not sound from her answer as though that was the case. She said business-to-business relationships between the United States and South Africa need to be strong, but then she said, as to whether I should make a Secretary of State happy or like me, that is less important. So the sense here is that if the Americans are looking for movement on the issue of Ukraine, they may not find much of that. But this is going to be a back-and-forth dialogue over the next 48 hours at multiple levels here, starting, as I say, at the State Department now with the Foreign Minister, and then, of course, President Ramaphosa helming that conversation with President Biden. He'll also be visiting congressional leaders up on Capitol Hill while he's here.
It's a really difficult one for South Africa in many ways because we desperately need trade and investment. Tourism is needed. We need people visiting our country. But at the same time, the ANC government has been absolutely dogged in saying we remain neutral. Though, of course, if you read some of the ANC policy documents, it looks a lot more pro-Russia than I would say neutral is. But do you think that the US government is going to hold true to their commitments, that they will not bully South Africa? Or do you think there's going to be very much, if you want our trade and investment, you really need to take a position on Russia and on China?
Well, I think it's important to underscore that the Biden administration also wants increased trade and investment, because that's good for an American economy that has been somewhat poleaxed by the COVID-19 pandemic and is facing all sorts of difficulties itself, possibly entering a recession. The White House denies that, but many economic analysts believe that it is right on the cusp of beginning. So it's not an entirely one-way street, that conversation. And Antony Blinken, when he was in South Africa just a few weeks ago, laying the groundwork for this visit, did sound a conciliatory note. I mean, Joe Biden himself has been obviously a fixture in Washington for the best part of half a century. He's surrounded by foreign policy veterans who will themselves remember that back in the darker period of the apartheid era, South Africa's ANC had an embassy in Moscow when the South African government did not. And so there's an understanding of the depth of the historic ties between the ANC and the former Soviet Union. But the point that the Biden administration will be making is that the former Soviet Union is no more. Vladimir Putin, Joe Biden says, is a war criminal in Ukraine. And there's no question that President Biden sees the coming together of a coalition of democracies to take a stance on Ukraine's right to self-determination as being an absolutely central facet of his foreign policy. So it's going to be a complicated conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, Cyril Ramaphosa, Joe Biden, and so many other world leaders are going to be heading to the United Kingdom when Queen Elizabeth II is laid to rest on Monday. That has been an event that has really dominated in many countries, even in the USA, hasn't it, Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. An enormous amount of attention focused on it here in the United States. As you know, Sally, the Americans have no royal family of their own and often like to live a little bit vicariously through Britain's royal family. And certainly the television networks here have been providing wall-to-wall coverage of those events. That President Biden, the First Lady Jill Biden, and President Ramaphosa will be attending. There are questions about what happens after the funeral, because, of course, next week the United Nations General Assembly meeting is due to be getting underway in New York. President Biden and President Ramaphosa, both certainly prior to news of the Queen's funeral, were expecting to address the world body early next week. We are waiting still for information about precisely what's going to happen with regard to the timetable at the United Nations General Assembly. There's been some pretty fevered footwork underway behind the scenes for both governments, the South African and the US, and other governments around the world, of course, given that the funeral's taking place on Monday, to try and determine what it means for everyone's travel schedules and plans to attend the UN General Assembly in New York. And we're still a little bit in the dark about where all that goes. But there may be a further opportunity on Monday in London, although there will, of course, be a large number of world leaders present. But there may be another brief opportunity for President Biden and President Ramaphosa at least to meet in passing during the course of that funeral for Her Majesty the Queen.